I didn't know who he was when I touched him. That's the part I keep coming back to, the part that makes my chest tighten even now. If I'd had even the slightest idea, I never would have reached out. I never would have let my fingers brush against his wrist in that cramped hospital corridor. Never would have steadied myself against him when the gurney rushed past and knocked me off balance. But I didn't know. So I touched him. It was just a hand on his arm. A moment of contact. My palm against the dark fabric of his suit jacket. My fingertips grazing the bare skin just above his watch. He'd been standing in the hallway outside the emergency room, perfectly still, perfectly out of place in his tailored elegance, while chaos swirled around us. I'd been running late for my shift, my nurse's clogs squeaking on the linoleum, my hair still damp from the shower. I barely had time to take. The gurney came out of nowhere, a trauma case. All blood and shouting, and I stumbled sideways to avoid it. Right into him. "I'm sorry," I gasped, pulling my hand back like I touched fire. I didn't. He looked down at me. That was when everything changed. His eyes were dark, not brown, darker than that, almost black in the fluorescent lighting, with something cold and measuring behind them. He didn't smile. Didn't reassure me the way most people would have. He just looked like he was cataloging every detail of my face, filing it away somewhere I couldn't see. "It's fine," he said. His voice was low, controlled, the kind of voice that didn't need to rise to be heard. I should have walked away then. Should have apologized again and disappeared into the nurse's station where I belonged. But something in the way he stood there, so still, so separate from the noise around us, made me pause. "Are you here for someone?" I asked, because that's what I always asked, because I was good at my job, good at being kind, good at pretending I wasn't intimidated by the way he was still watching me. "No," he said. Just that. No explanation, no elaboration. The gurney had already disappeared through the trauma bay doors. The hallway was returning to its usual controlled urgency, but he hadn't moved and neither had I, and I suddenly felt like I was standing in a pocket of silence that shouldn't exist in a place this loud. "Okay," I said softly. "Well, be careful. It gets chaotic around here." The corner of his mouth moved. Not quite a smile. Something more unsettling than that. I'll remember that. He stepped aside then, letting me pass. But I felt his gaze follow me all the way to the nurse's station. I felt it like a physical weight, pressing between my shoulder blades, making my skin prickle with awareness. I told myself I was imagining it. I told myself he was just another visitor, just another well-dressed stranger passing through the ER on a Wednesday night. I told myself a lot of things that turned out to be lies. The shift blurred into the usual rhythm vitals checks, medication rounds, holding hands with frightened patients while doctors delivered bad news. I forgot about him. Or at least, I tried to, but at 2 a.m. when I stepped outside for a break, I saw him again. He was leaning against a black car in the parking lot, the kind of car that cost more than I'd make in 5 years. The sodium lights cast strange shadows across his face, and he was looking at his phone with the same intense focus he'd turned on me earlier. I should have gone back inside. Instead, I froze on the top step, my coffee growing cold in my hands. He looked up, saw me. And this time, he did smile. It wasn't a kind smile. "You work late," he said, like we were continuing a conversation we'd never actually started. "Night shift," I managed. My voice came out smaller than I wanted. Are you still waiting for someone?" "No." He pushed off the car, and I realized with a jolt that he was walking toward me. Not quickly, not threateningly, but deliberately, each step measured and certain. I should have run. "Then what are you doing here?" I asked. He stopped at the base of the steps, looking up at me. The angle put us almost at eye level despite his height. "You touched me earlier," he said quietly. My heart stuttered. I apologized. "I didn't mean to, I know." His gaze held mine, and I couldn't look away. "But no one touches me, Nurse Cora." The coffee cup slipped from my fingers. It shattered on the concrete between us, hot liquid splashing across the steps, and I stared at him with something cold spreading through my chest. "How do you know my name?" He tilted his head slightly, and in that moment, he looked almost curious, like I was a puzzle he was trying to solve. "Your badge," he said simply. I looked down. My ID badge was clipped to my scrubs, my full name printed in block letters. Cora Mitchell. It should have been a relief, a logical explanation, but the way he said it, the way he'd already known. "I should go back inside," I whispered. "Yes," he agreed. "You should." But he didn't move. And neither did I. "Touch me again," he said, so softly I almost didn't hear it. "What?" "Touch me." His voice was still quiet, still controlled, but there was something underneath it now. Something hungry, like you did before, your hand on my arm. "I don't understand. I think you do." The night air felt too cold suddenly, and too warm at the same time. My pulse was hammering in my throat. This was wrong. This whole conversation was wrong. I didn't know this man, didn't know why he was asking me to touch him, didn't know why the request felt less like flirtation and more like a test. "No," I said, and my voice shook. "I don't know you. I don't know what you want." For a long moment, he just looked at me. Then he smiled again, that same unsettling almost smile. "You will," he said. He turned and walked back to his car. I watched him go, my hands trembling, my mind racing with questions I didn't have words for. The car's engine purred to life expensive, quiet, dangerous. He didn't look at me again as he drove away, disappearing into the night like he'd never been there at all. But I knew better, because on the step where I'd been standing, tucked under my discarded coffee cup, was a business card. Heavy stock, black with silver lettering. No name, just a phone number and 3 words embossed across the center. "Call me first." I picked it up with shaking fingers, and that was when I realized this wasn't flirtation. This was a beginning, and I had no idea what I'd just started. I didn't call. For 3 days, I carried that card in my pocket like a secret, like a splinter working its way deeper under my skin. I pulled double shifts at the hospital, threw myself into work with an intensity that made my coworkers ask if I was okay, and I told myself I was being smart, cautious. I told myself a lot of things, but every time I reached into my pocket and felt the sharp edge of that card against my fingertips, I remembered the way he'd looked at me, the way he'd said touch me again like it was both command and confession. On the 4th day, I found the roses. They were waiting on my doorstep when I got home from my shift, a massive arrangement of white roses so perfect they almost didn't look real. No card, no note, just flowers that probably cost more than my monthly rent, sitting outside my apartment like an accusation. I left them there. But the next morning, they were inside my apartment. I stood in my living room, still in my scrubs, staring at the vase now sitting on my kitchen counter, and felt something cold slide down my spine. My door had been locked. I was certain of it. I was always careful about locks, about security, about keeping the world at a safe distance. And yet, the roses sat there, pristine and impossible, and I knew with absolute certainty who'd sent them. I pulled out my phone with trembling fingers, pulled out his card, stared at the number embossed in silver. "Call me first. Not if you want. Not when you're ready. First." Like there would be other things, other moments, other invasions I wouldn't see coming. I called. He answered on the first ring. "Cora." No question, no greeting, just my name, spoken in that same controlled voice that had haunted me for days. "How did you get into my apartment?" My voice came out steadier than I felt. "Does it matter?" "Yes, it matters. You can't break into someone's home and..." I didn't break anything. There was something almost amused in his tone. "I used a key. I didn't give you a key." "No," he agreed. "You didn't." Silence stretched between us. I could hear my own heartbeat, loud and frantic, and underneath it the faint sound of traffic from his end of the line. He was outside somewhere, moving. "The roses are a thank you," he said finally. for not calling the police. I still could. You won't. The certainty in his voice made my hands shake. You don't know that. I know you touched me in that hospital corridor, and I know you felt it too. The connection, the recognition. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. His voice dropped lower, more intimate. You felt it the same moment I did. That's why you're afraid. Not because I sent flowers. Because you wanted to see me again. I didn't. Touch me again, Cora. The words hit me like a physical thing. I remembered him standing at the base of those hospital steps, looking up at me with those dark eyes, making the same request. The same quiet demand. Why? I whispered. Why do you keep saying that? For a long moment he didn't answer. Then, because no one touches me without permission. Without fear. But you did. You steadied yourself against me like I was just another person, like I was safe. And he paused. I need to understand why. I didn't know you, I said. That's why. I didn't know I was supposed to be afraid. And now? Now I was terrified. Now I knew something was fundamentally wrong with this entire situation. Now I understood that whatever this man was, whatever he wanted, it wasn't normal attraction or normal interest. Now I want you to leave me alone, I said. Another pause.
We need to leave now. Move
Then,
the car.
I know, just give
so
me a second. I
softly,
need to make sure we weren't followed.
No, you don't. He hung up. I stood there in my
can't
kitchen,
leave her here. We have to
surrounded
move
by
her.
white roses, and
I said it's
realized
taken
he was
care of.
right.
Don't
I
touch
saw him
anything.
again that night. Not at the hospital. Not at my apartment. At the grocery store 3 blocks from my building. Standing in the produce section at 11 p.m. like he belonged there. Examining apples with the same focused intensity he'd turned on everything else. I stopped in the middle of the aisle, my basket nearly slipping from my hands. He looked up, saw me, and smiled. Cora. He said my name like a greeting, like a secret. Buying food this time instead of coffee? Are you following me? The question came out too loud. An elderly woman glanced at us and quickly looked away. Yes. The honest answer was somehow worse than a lie would have been. Why? He set down the apple he'd been holding and walked toward me. I should have backed up, should have run, but my feet wouldn't move, and then he was close enough that I could smell his cologne, something dark and expensive, and see the exact shade of gray in his dark suit. Because I want to know who you are, he said simply. The woman who touched me without fear. The nurse who works double shifts and drinks terrible coffee and lives in an apartment with 3 locks on the door but still leaves her window open at night. My breath caught. You've been watching me. Yes. That's illegal. That's stalking, I know. He reached out slowly, giving me time to pull away, and brushed a strand of hair behind my ear. His fingers were warm against my cheek. Touch me again, Cora. Right here. In front of all these people. Touch me like you did before, like I'm normal, like I'm not. He stopped himself. Not what? I whispered. His hand dropped. Something shifted in his expression, something dark and almost pained. Not someone you should know, he finished quietly. Then why are you here? Why are you doing this? Because, he said, and his voice was so low I had to lean closer to hear it. No one has touched me gently in 10 years, and I need to know if it was real. My heart cracked open. I don't know what he saw in my face: confusion, fear, the traitorous softness that made me want to understand him despite every logical instinct screaming at me to run. But something changed in his eyes. One dinner, he said. Let me take you to dinner. Let me explain. Explain what? Why you should be afraid of me, he said, and why I can't seem to leave you alone anyway. I should have said no, should have walked away, called the police, changed my locks and my phone number and my entire life to get away from whatever this was. Instead, I heard myself whisper, okay. His smile was terrifying in its beauty. Tomorrow night, 8 o'clock. I'll send a car. He walked away before I could change my mind, disappearing between the aisles like smoke, and I stood there with my forgotten basket and my racing heart and the terrible certainty that I'd just agreed to something I couldn't take back. The elderly woman from earlier passed me again, moving quickly, her face pale. Be careful, dear, she whispered. I know who that man is. But she didn't say his name. And I didn't ask. The car that arrived at 8 was exactly what I'd expected. Fleek, black, expensive. The driver was equally polished, a man in his 50s with careful eyes who opened the door for me without speaking. I'd changed my outfit 4 times, settled on a simple navy dress that covered everything but still felt too revealing under the weight of whatever this night would bring. My hand shook as I applied lipstick, shook as I locked my apartment door, shook as I slid into the leather interior and watched my neighborhood disappear through tinted windows. The driver didn't tell me where we were going. I didn't ask. We drove for 20 minutes, leaving the familiar streets behind, until the car pulled up to a restaurant I'd only seen in magazines. The kind of place where reservation lists were months long and dinner cost more than my weekly paycheck. He was waiting outside. Same dark suit. Same controlled posture. But tonight there was something different in his expression, something almost nervous, though the word seemed impossible applied to him. The driver opened my door. I stepped out onto the sidewalk and he was there immediately, offering his hand. I hesitated. "Touch me, Cora," he said softly. "You've already done it once. You can do it again." I placed my hand in his. His fingers closed around mine, warm, strong, careful, like he was holding something fragile. Like I was something that might break. "Thank you for coming," he said. "I shouldn't have." "I know." He led me toward the restaurant entrance. "But you're here anyway." They seated us in a private room at the back, all dark wood and dim lighting in a view of the city that stole my breath. The kind of room where secrets were kept, where dangerous conversations happened behind closed doors. I sat across from him, and for the first time since that hospital corridor, we were truly alone. "You know my name," I said quietly, "but I don't know yours." He poured wine with steady hands, something red and probably older than I was. "Dante. Just Dante. For now." I wrapped my hands around the wine glass without drinking. "The woman in the grocery store, she recognized you. She was afraid." "Yes." "Why?" He took a sip of his wine, watching me over the rim. "Because I'm not a good man, Cora. I'm not someone you should be sitting across from in a restaurant sharing dinner with, letting into your life." "Then why did you ask me here?" "Because I'm also selfish." He set down his glass. "And because I need you to understand what you've done." "I haven't done anything. I bumped into you. I touched your arm. That's not—" "No one touches me," he interrupted, and there was something raw in his voice now. "No one approaches me without fear or calculation. Everyone who comes near me wants something or fears what I'll take. But you—" He reached across the table slowly. His fingers hovered above my hand where it rested beside my wineglass. "You touched me like I was human," he finished. "Like I was just another person. And I haven't felt that in so long I'd forgotten what it was like." My throat tightened. "What are you?" "Dangerous." "That's not an answer. It's the only answer you need." His hand finally settled over mine, warm and heavy. "I'm telling you this so you can leave. So you can walk out of this restaurant right now and forget you ever met me. Because once you know the truth, you can't unknow it. Once you're connected to me, you're connected to everything I am. I should have pulled my hand away. Should have stood up and left like he was suggesting." "Tell me," I whispered instead. His thumb traced slow circles against my knuckles. "My family controls most of this city. The parts you see, and the parts you don't. We're in construction, shipping, real estate, and other things that don't have official names." "Other things," I repeated slowly. "You mean illegal things?" "Yes." The word hung between us, heavy and irreversible. I couldn't say it, couldn't make the word real. "Mafia," he finished for me. "That's what people call it. I prefer to think of it as maintaining order in places where the law doesn't reach. But yes, if you need a label, that's the one." I did pull my hand away then, pressed back in my chair, my mind racing. Mafia. He'd just admitted he was Mafia, the man who'd been following me, watching me, sending me roses and breaking into my apartment was— "I should go," I breathed. "Yes," he agreed, "you should." But he stood up and walked around the table before I could move. Came to stand beside my chair, close enough that I could feel the warmth of him. But before you do, he said quietly, I need to know if it was real. If what was real? The way you touched me, the gentleness. He crouched down beside my chair, putting us at eye level. Touch me again, Cora, right now, knowing what I am, knowing what I am, knowing what I'm capable of. Touch me and let me see if you can still do it without fear. My heart was hammering. Every logical thought in my head was screaming at me to run, to get away from this man and his world and his impossible requests. But when I looked into his eyes, I didn't see a monster. I saw loneliness. Slowly, so slowly, my hand trembled with the movement. I reached out. My fingers found his face, the sharp line of his jaw, the warmth of his skin. He closed his eyes like I'd heard him. See? He whispered. Still gentle, still unafraid. I am afraid, I admitted. I know, but you're touching me anyway. His hand came up to cover mine, pressing my palm against his face. That's the difference. That's what I can't stop thinking about. Why does it matter so much? His eyes opened, and in them I saw something dark and desperate. Because everyone else touches me with an agenda, with fear or greed or ambition. But you, he turned his face into my palm, his lips brushing against my skin. You touched me because you needed stability in a chaotic moment. You touched me like I could provide that, like I was safe. But you're not safe. No, he agreed. I'm not. Then I should go. Yes. But his hand tightened over mine, holding it against his face. Will you? I should have said yes. Should have pulled away and walked out and never looked back. I don't know, I whispered. Something flashed in his eyes. Triumph, relief, something hungry and desperate. Then stay for dinner, he said. Just dinner, let me feed you. Let me talk to you like a normal person. And after, if you still want to leave, I'll have my driver take you home and you'll never see me again. It was a lie. We both knew it was a lie. If I stayed for dinner, if I let this continue, there would be no clean ending, no simple walking away. But I was already nodding. Already letting him guide me back to my seat. Already making the choice that would change everything. He returned to his side of the table, and a moment later, servers appeared with food I didn't remember ordering. The meal was exquisite, each course more beautiful than the last, but I barely tasted any of it, because across from me, Dante was talking. Telling me about his life in careful pieces, his family's history, the weight of expectations, the violence he'd witnessed and sometimes caused. He didn't hide anything, didn't soften the truth. He laid it all out like evidence, like he was building a case for why I should run. But with every story, every confession, I felt myself leaning closer. Not because I wasn't afraid, but because underneath the danger, underneath the power and the violence, I could see the man who'd asked me to touch him like he was human. And that man terrified me more than anything else, because I was starting to care what happened to him. Thank you, he said as dessert arrived, for staying. I haven't decided anything yet, I reminded him. I know. He smiled, a real smile this time, soft and almost sad. But you're still here. That's enough. I went back to work the next day and pretended everything was normal, but normal was a lie I could barely maintain. I moved through my shift on autopilot, checking vitals, administering medications, smiling at patients while my mind replayed every moment of that dinner. Dante's confession. His touch. The way he'd looked at me like I was simultaneously his salvation and his doom. Mafia. The word kept circling through my thoughts, sharp and impossible. I'd had dinner with the criminal. I'd touched his face. I'd stayed when every instinct should have made me run. And worse, I wanted to see him again. Cora? You okay? I looked up to find Melissa, one of the other night nurses, watching me with concern. I was standing in the supply closet, staring at a shelf of bandages like they held the secrets of the universe. Fine, I said quickly. Just tired. You've been tired a lot lately. She leaned against the doorframe. Everything all right? No problems at home? Just a mafia boss following me around. Nothing serious. Everything's fine. I lied. But that night, when I left the hospital, I found Dante's car waiting in the parking lot. Not him, just the car. The same driver from the night before, standing beside the open back door like this, was something that happened every day. "Miss Mitchell," he said politely. "Mr. Mitchell, Dante asked me to ensure you get home safely. I can get myself home. I'm sure you can." His expression didn't change. "But Mr. Dante was insistent. I looked at the car luxury and danger wrapped in black metal and then at my own beat-up Honda parked 3 rows over. Practical, normal, safe. I got in Dante's car. The driver didn't speak during the ride, didn't explain why Dante wasn't there. But when we pulled up to my building, I understood. Dante was waiting on my doorstep. He stood as I approached, and even in the dim hallway lighting, I could see the tension in his shoulders. Something had changed since last night. Something had shifted. "We need to talk," he said. Inside my apartment, he moved to the window first. Checked the locks. Drew the curtains. When he turned back to me, his expression was harder than I'd seen before. "You're in danger," he said without preamble. My stomach dropped. "What? People know about you." "Know that I've been," he paused, "interested. And that makes you a target." "A target for what?" "For people who want to hurt me." He crossed the room in 3 strides, stopping just in front of me. "My world doesn't allow for weakness, Cora, and caring about anyone is the biggest weakness there is. I never asked you to care about me." "I know." His hand came up, almost touching my face, then dropped. "That's what makes it worse. You didn't ask for any of this. You just touched me in a hospital corridor, and now you're caught in something you don't understand. Then explain it to me." He was quiet for a long moment. Then, "There are 4 major families that control this city. Mine is one of them. We have agreements, territories, rules. But there's one family, the Morellis, who've been pushing boundaries, testing limits. They found out about you 2 days ago. My blood went cold." "How?" "Because I wasn't careful enough." Anger flashed across his face, anger at himself. "I should have stayed away, should have left you alone after that first night. But I couldn't, and now they know you matter, and that means what?" "That means they'll use you against me, if they get the chance." He finally touched me, then both hands cupping my face, gentle despite the urgency in his voice. "I need you to let me protect you. I need you to trust me. I don't even know you." "Yes, you do." His thumbs brushed across my cheekbones. "You know the important parts. You know I won't hurt you. You know I'll do whatever it takes to keep you safe. Because I touched you gently once? Because you touch me like I'm human," he corrected. "And I haven't been human in a very long time." There was something desperate in his eyes now. Something that made my chest ache despite every logical reason I should push him away. "What do you want me to do?" I whispered. "Let me move you somewhere safe, just for a few days until I can neutralize the threat." "Move me? I can't just. I have work, I have my life. You'll have neither if the Morellis get to you first." His grip tightened slightly. "Please, Cora, let me do this. Let me protect you." Every instinct said this was wrong. That I should call the police, should get away from him and his world and his danger. But when I looked into his eyes, I saw genuine fear, not for himself, for me. "Okay," I heard myself say. We left within the hour. Dante packed a bag for me while making phone calls in low, clipped Italian. I caught words here and there, sicurezza, protezione, immediately, and felt the reality of the situation settle over me like a weight. This was real. The danger was real. And I'd just agreed to let a man I barely knew take me somewhere, safe, without even knowing where that meant. The car was waiting downstairs. Different car this time, armored, Dante explained. Bulletproof glass. Reinforced doors. Bulletproof, I repeated faintly. Precaution, he said. But his hand found mine in the darkness of the back seat, lacing our fingers together like an apology. We drove for 40 minutes, leaving the city behind. The landscape shifted from urban to suburban to rural, trees appearing where buildings had been, darkness thickening until the only light came from our headlights. Finally, we turned down a long private drive. The house at the end was massive, not a house, a compound. Stone walls, iron gates, lights illuminating a structure that looked more like a fortress than a home. "This is where you live?" I asked. "One of the places." Dante helped me out of the car. "It's secure. 24-hour surveillance, armed guards, no one gets in or out without my knowledge. It's a prison. It's protection." He turned to me, his face serious in the floodlights. "I know this isn't what you wanted. I know this is frightening. But until I handle the Morelli situation, this is the safest place for you." "And how long will that take?" "A few days. A week at most." A week. 7 days trapped in a compound with a man I'd met less than a week ago. A man who was currently leading me through a door that locked behind us with an ominous click. The interior was beautiful, all dark wood and expensive furniture and art that probably cost more than my education. But it felt cold. Empty. Like a display, rather than a home. "Your room is upstairs," Dante said. "Second door on the right. There's a private bathroom, anything you need. If you want something, just ask. And you?" "I'll be working, making calls, dealing with this." He looked at me and for a moment his composure cracked. "I'm sorry, Cora. I'm sorry I brought you into this. You said I could still leave. At the restaurant, you said if I wanted to walk away. That was before the Morellis knew about you." His voice was quiet, almost broken. "Now leaving isn't safe. Now the only way to protect you is to keep you close." He walked away before I could respond, disappearing into another room and leaving me standing alone in a beautiful prison. I climbed the stairs slowly. Found the room he'd indicated. It was lovely soft lighting, a massive bed, windows that looked out over dark grounds, windows that didn't open. I sat on the edge of the bed and finally let myself feel the full weight of what had happened. I'd let a mafia boss take me away from my life. And I had no idea if I'd ever get it back. 3 days passed in strange suspension. I didn't leave the compound. Didn't go to work. Dante had called the hospital himself, explained I had a family emergency, arranged for my shifts to be covered. I didn't argue, partly because I was afraid, partly because some traitorous part of me didn't want to. The house was a contradiction. Beautiful but cold. Luxurious but empty. I wandered through rooms that looked like they'd been decorated by professionals but never actually lived in. Everything was perfect. Everything was pristine. Everything was lonely. Dante was gone most of the time, locked in his study, making calls in Italian, occasionally leaving the compound entirely with instructions for the guards to watch me closely. When he was there, he was polite, distant, like he was deliberately keeping space between us. I told myself I was relieved. I was lying. On the 4th morning, I woke to find breakfast waiting in my room, fresh fruit, pastries, coffee that smelled like heaven. But no note, no explanation, just food that appeared like magic, delivered by staff I never saw. I ate mechanically, staring out the window at grounds I wasn't allowed to explore, and felt the walls closing in. By noon, I couldn't stand it anymore. I left my room and went looking for him. The house was a maze, corridors branching into more corridors, doors that opened into libraries and sitting rooms, and spaces that served no purpose I could identify. But I finally found his study on the 2nd floor, the door slightly ajar. I should have knocked. Instead, I pushed it open and stepped inside. Dante was at his desk, surrounded by papers and laptop screens. He'd shed his jacket at some point, rolled up his shirt sleeves, and there was an exhaustion in the line of his shoulders that made him look almost human. He looked up when I entered, something flickering across his face, surprise, then pleasure, then that careful blankness he wore like armor. "You should be resting," he said. "I've been resting for 4 days. I'm going insane. It's not safe. I'm not asking to leave. I'm asking you to talk to me." I crossed the room before I could lose my nerve. "You brought me here. You locked me in this beautiful prison. The least you can do is acknowledge I exist." He leaned back in his chair, studying me with those dark eyes. "I'm protecting you. By ignoring me? By keeping distance between us? His voice was quiet. Because every time I'm near you, I want to touch you, and I can't. The confession hit me like a physical thing. Why not? I whispered. Because you're here as my responsibility, not my... He stopped himself. You didn't choose this. You didn't choose me. I won't take advantage of that. I moved closer, stopped on the other side of his desk. What if I want you to? Cora, I'm going crazy in this house, Dante. I can't work, can't leave, can't do anything except think, and all I think about is, I swallowed hard, is how you looked at me in that restaurant, how you asked me to touch you, how you said no one else touches you without fear. That doesn't mean, touch me, I interrupted, and my voice shook. Like you asked me to touch you. Show me I'm not just a responsibility, show me this is real. For a long moment, he didn't move. Then he stood, slowly, and came around the desk, stopped close enough that I could feel the heat of him. If I touch you, he said quietly, I won't want to stop. Then don't. His hand came up, cupping my face with a gentleness that made my chest ache. You don't know what you're asking. I know I'm tired of being alone in this house. I know I'm tired of feeling like a prisoner. I covered his hand with mine. I know I can't stop thinking about you even though everything about this is wrong. It is wrong. But his thumb brushed across my lower lip. You should be afraid of me. I am afraid. I turned my face into his palm, the same gesture he'd made with me days ago, but I'm more afraid of staying in this house, in this situation, and never knowing what this could be. Something broke in his expression. His other hand found my waist, pulling me closer, not roughly but firmly, decisively, like he'd been holding back, and finally couldn't anymore. Tell me to stop, he said against my hair. No. He pulled back enough to look at me, his eyes searching mine for something I didn't fully understand. Then, slowly, he lowered his mouth to mine. The kiss was gentle, restrained. Like he was afraid of breaking me, his lips moved against mine with a softness that contradicted everything I knew about him. The danger, the violence, the power. This was different. This was careful. I melted into him, my hands finding his chest, feeling his heart pounding beneath my palms. He made a sound low in his throat, half pleasure, half pain, and deepened the kiss slightly. Just slightly, still controlled, still holding back. When he finally pulled away, we were both breathing hard. That was a mistake, he said, but he didn't let go of me. It didn't feel like a mistake. That's what makes it dangerous. His forehead pressed against mine. You're not safe with me, Cora, even here. Even now, especially now. Why? Because now I know what you taste like. His hand tightened on my waist, and I'll never be able to forget it. After that, everything changed. Dante stopped avoiding me, started taking meals with me, breakfast in the morning room, dinner in the formal dining room that felt too big for two people. We talked. About nothing important. About everything. He told me about growing up in this world, the expectations, the violence he'd witnessed as a child, the first time he'd had to make a choice between mercy and survival. I told him about nursing school, about my parents who died in a car accident when I was 20, about choosing to save lives because I couldn't save theirs. That's why you do it, he said one evening over wine. The double shifts, the exhaustion, you're trying to make up for them. Maybe. I traced the rim of my glass. Or maybe I just don't know what else to do with myself. You could do anything, be anything, be anything. I'm a nurse. That's all I know. No. He reached across the table, taking my hand. That's all you've let yourself be. There's a difference. The intimacy of the gesture, his thumb tracing circles on my palm, felt more intense than the kiss had been. More dangerous. What do you see when you look at me? I asked quietly. He was silent for a long moment. Then, someone who deserves better than this, better than me. That's not an answer. It's the only answer I can give. He released my hand, but his eyes stayed on mine. You're good, Cora. Genuinely good. And I'm human, I finished. You're human. That's what I see when I look at you. His expression shifted, something painful crossing his face. Don't make me into something I'm not. I'm not. I'm just seeing what's actually there. What's there is dangerous. I know. I stood, moving around the table until I was beside his chair, but I'm still here anyway. He looked up at me, and in his eyes I saw warring emotions: desire, restraint, something like desperation. Touch me, he said softly. It was the same request he'd made before, but this time felt different. This time felt like permission for more than just comfort. I reached out, my fingers finding his face, the sharp line of his jaw, the warmth of his skin. He closed his eyes, leaning into my touch like a man starving for gentleness. Stay with me tonight, he whispered. Not for just stay. Let me fall asleep knowing you're close. It was the most vulnerable thing he'd ever said. Okay, I breathed. We fell asleep in the library, on a couch too small for two people, his arms around me, my head on his chest, listening to his heartbeat slow into the rhythm of sleep. And for the first time since arriving at the compound, I felt safe. Not because of the walls or the guards or the security, but because of him. Even knowing what he was capable of, I felt safe in his arms, and that terrified me more than anything else. I woke to sunlight streaming through the library windows and the realization that I was alone. The space beside me on the couch was still warm. Dante hadn't been gone long, but the absence felt immediate and acute, like waking from a dream into something colder. I sat up, pulling the blanket someone had draped over us closer around my shoulders, and tried to make sense of what I was feeling. This wasn't supposed to happen. I wasn't supposed to care about him, wasn't supposed to miss him when he left a room, wasn't supposed to feel safe in his presence despite knowing exactly how dangerous he was. But I did. The door opened. Dante stood in the doorway, 2 coffee cups in hand, and something in my chest loosened at the sight of him. You're awake, he said quietly. You left? I was getting coffee. He crossed the room, offering me one of the cups. I didn't want to wake you. The gesture was simple, domestic, so at odds with everything else about this situation that I almost laughed. What? He asked, catching my expression. This. You. Getting me coffee like we're... I trailed off. Like we're what? Like we're normal. Like this is a relationship instead of protective custody. Like I have any right to these feelings. Nothing, I said instead. But he sat beside me, close enough that our legs touched, and I knew he understood anyway. The Morelli situation is resolved, he said after a moment. You're safe now. The words should have brought relief, should have made me happy. Instead, my stomach dropped. So I can go home? Yes, he stared at his coffee. My driver can take you back this afternoon. Back to your apartment, your job, your life. Everything goes back to normal. Normal, I repeated, as if none of this happened. Silence stretched between us, heavy with things neither of us was saying. What if I don't want that? The words escaped before I could stop them. His head turned sharply. What? What if I don't want to go back and pretend this didn't happen? My hands shook around the coffee cup. What if I don't want to forget you? Cora, I know this is insane. I know I barely know you. I know everything about this situation is wrong and dangerous and completely irrational. The words tumbled out in a rush, but I can't stop thinking about you. Can't stop wanting to understand you. Can't stop. He kissed me. It was different from the first time, less gentle, more desperate. His hand cupped the back of my neck, holding me to him, and I tasted coffee and frustration and something like relief on his lips. When he pulled back, we were both breathing hard. I don't want you to go, he said roughly. I haven't wanted you to go since the moment I met you. But wanting and having are different things, and you deserve. Stop telling me what I deserve. My hand fisted in his shirt. Let me decide that for myself. You don't understand what you'd be choosing. Then explain it to me. He stood abruptly, putting distance between us, his hand running through his hair in agitation. If you stay, if this continues, you become a target, permanently. Not just from the Morellis, from everyone who wants to hurt me. You'll never be completely safe again. Your life will never be fully yours. It's not fully mine now, I pointed out. I work myself to exhaustion. I live alone. I have no one who'd notice if I disappeared for a week. The words hurt to say, but they were true. At least with you, I feel something. That's not enough reason. It's the only reason that matters. I stood too, crossing to where he'd retreated by the window. You asked me to touch you like you were human. You said no one else does that. But maybe the truth is, no one else touches you like you're human, because you won't let them close enough to try. His jaw tightened. It's not that simple. Then make it simple. Tell me what you want. For a long moment, he just stared at me. Then, I want to wake up next to you every morning. I want to fall asleep listening to you breathe. I want to know you're safe because you're with me, not because you're hidden away from me. His voice dropped lower, rougher. I want to touch you without holding back. I want to stop pretending I'm not completely obsessed with you. My breath caught. I want, he continued, closing the distance between us, to stop fighting what I felt the moment you touched me in that hospital corridor. This connection, this need, this absolute certainty that you're supposed to be mine. His hand came up, gentle despite the intensity in his voice, cupping my face. But more than any of that, he finished quietly. I want you to be happy. And I'm not certain I can give you that. You don't get to decide that for me. No, he agreed. But I need you to understand what you're choosing. I need you to know that once you're mine, I won't let you go easily. I won't be noble about it. I'll be possessive and demanding and probably suffocating. I'm still here, I whispered. Something fierce flashed in his eyes. Say it, he demanded softly. Say you're choosing this. Choosing me. Say it so I know it's real. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was insane. Everything about this was insane. I'd known him for barely a week, knew almost nothing about his world, his life, the danger that came with being connected to him. But when I looked into his eyes, I saw the same desperation I felt. I'm choosing you, I said. He kissed me again harder this time, with none of the restraint from before. His hands tangled in my hair, tilting my head back, and I gasped against his mouth. The sound made him pause, pulling back just enough to look at me. I need to know you're sure, he said roughly, because if we do this, if we cross this line, there's no going back. I'm sure. You're shaking. I'm nervous, my hands fisted in his shirt. But I'm sure. He searched my face for a long moment, then, slowly, he took my hand and led me out of the library. We didn't go far. Just down the hall to his room, a space I hadn't seen before. It was surprisingly simple, a large bed, dark furniture, windows that overlooked the grounds. Personal in a way. The rest of the house wasn't. He closed the door behind us and just stopped, stood there looking at me like he was memorizing every detail. What? I asked nervously. I'm giving you one more chance to leave. His voice was strained. Walk out that door right now, and I'll take you home. No questions. No pressure. We'll forget this conversation ever happened. I don't want to forget. Cora, I want this, want you, even if I'm terrified, even if I don't fully understand it. I crossed to him, placing my hand over his heart. You asked me to touch you like you're human, but you're also asking me to choose you like you're a monster. You can't be both. I am both. Then I'm choosing both. His control broke. He pulled me against him, his mouth finding mine with an intensity that stole my breath. This kiss was different, demanding, consuming, like he was trying to prove a point. His hand slid down my back, my sides, learning the shape of me through my clothes. I trembled against him, overwhelmed by sensation, by emotion, by the sheer intensity of feeling this wanted, Tell me to stop, he murmured against my lips, even as his hands continued their exploration. No. Tell me you'll regret this in the morning. I won't. He pulled back enough to look at me, his eyes dark and intense. Then tell me you trust me. That gave me pause. Did I trust him? This man who'd followed me, who'd brought me here, who'd admitted to violence and crime and danger. But when I looked into his eyes, I saw the truth. I trust you, I whispered. And I meant it. He lifted me then easily, carefully, and carried me to the bed, laid me down like I was something precious, something fragile. We'll go slow, he promised, settling beside me. We'll stop whenever you want. Okay. His hand found my face again, that gesture I was starting to recognize as uniquely his. Tender despite everything else about him. You're mine now, he said softly. Not a question, a statement, a promise. And for the first time since meeting him, I didn't want to argue. Yes, I breathed. His smile was beautiful and terrifying. Then let me show you what that means. His lips traced the line of my jaw, gentle despite the tension I could feel in his body. Every touch was deliberate, controlled, like he was still giving me time to change my mind. I didn't want to change my mind. Dante, I whispered. He pulled back slightly, his eyes finding mine in the dim light. Tell me what you want. I don't know. The honesty made my face heat. I've never. Understanding crossed his features, followed by something fierce and possessive. Never? His voice was rough. I shook my head, embarrassment flooding through me. I'm sorry, I should have said something before. If that changes, don't. He kissed me softly. Don't apologize. Don't ever apologize for that. His hand cupped my face, but it means we stop. If you get scared, it means we go slower. It means I'm even more careful with you than I planned to be. I'm not made of glass. No. His thumb brushed across my lower lip. But you're precious, and I won't rush this. He kissed me again, long and slow and so gentle I felt tears prick my eyes. His hands moved carefully, asking permission with every touch, giving me time to adjust, to breathe, to accept. My dress slipped away in increments. Then his shirt, skin against skin, warmth and closeness that made me tremble, not with fear, but with something else entirely. Okay? He asked constantly. Tell me if it's too much. It's not too much. You're shaking. I'm nervous. My hands found his chest, feeling his heart racing beneath my palm. But I want this. Want you. Something shifted in his expression, the careful control giving way to raw emotion. I'll take care of you, he promised. I'll make this good for you. And he did. Every touch was reverent. Every kiss was careful. He mapped my body with patient hands, learning what made me gasp, what made me arch toward him, what made me forget to be nervous. When it hurt, he stopped. Held me, whispered reassurances against my hair until I relaxed again. When I tensed, he slowed. When I finally surrendered completely, letting go of fear and uncertainty, he made me feel things I'd never imagined. Afterward, we lay tangled together, my head on his chest, his hand stroking through my hair with a gentleness that seemed impossible for a man like him. Are you okay? He asked quietly. Yes, more than okay. Changed somehow in ways I couldn't fully articulate. Any regrets? No. I tilted my head up to look at him. You? Never. He kissed my forehead. You're mine now, completely. The possessiveness in his voice should have scared me. Instead, it made me feel safe. What happens now? I asked. Now you stay here, with me. We figure out how to navigate this, your work, your life, integrating with mine. Just like that? Just like that! His arms tightened around me. Unless you want something different? I thought about my apartment, my solitary life, the empty rooms and lonelier nights. Then I thought about waking up next to him, about falling asleep listening to his heartbeat. I don't want different, I admitted, but I need to not lose myself completely. I need to still be me. I know. He pressed another kiss to my hair. I don't want you to lose yourself. I just want you to let me be part of your life. A pretty significant part, the most significant part, he corrected without apology. I should have argued, should have set boundaries, should have demanded space and independence and all the things that made rational sense. But lying there in his arms, feeling safer than I'd felt in years, I couldn't bring myself to care about rational. Okay, I whispered. He pulled back enough to look at me, surprise flickering across his features. Okay? Okay. I touched his face, mirroring the gesture he'd made so many times with me. I'll stay. I'll try to figure out how to fit into your world. I'll let you be possessive and demanding and suffocating. I'll try not to be too suffocating. Liar. His laugh was unexpected and beautiful. Maybe. But I'll try anyway. We spent the rest of the day in his room, learning each other, not just physically. Though there was more of that, gentler and slower now that the first urgency had passed, but in deeper ways. He told me about his mother, who died when he was young, about his father, who'd raised him to be exactly what he was, powerful, dangerous, alone. About the siblings he barely spoke to because trust was a luxury his family couldn't afford. I told him about my childhood dreams of being a doctor, about failing organic chemistry and switching to nursing, about the guilt I still carried for not being in the car with my parents the night they died. That guilt isn't yours to carry, he said firmly. How would you know? Because I carry enough of it myself. I recognize the weight. His hand found mine, lacing our fingers together. You couldn't have saved them. You know that rationally. But grief doesn't care about rational. No, I agreed quietly. It doesn't. For what it's worth, he said. I'm glad you weren't in that car, because if you had been, I never would have met you. It was the most selfish and most honest thing anyone had ever said to me. I'm glad I met you too, I admitted, even though it's completely insane. The best things usually are. That evening, he took me to dinner in the formal dining room, but this time it felt different. Less like captivity, more like home. Staff appeared and disappeared with courses food I'd never heard of. Wine that probably cost more than my monthly salary, but Dante watched me instead of eating, a small smile playing at his lips. What? I asked. You're beautiful. I flushed. You've said that before. I'll say it 1,000 more times and it still won't be enough. He reached across the table, taking my hand. You look happy. I wasn't sure I'd ever see you look happy in this house. I am happy. The realization surprised me. I don't understand it. I should be terrified, should be running, but you're not. No. I squeezed his hand. I'm not. Good. He brought my hand to his lips, kissing my knuckles. Because I meant what I said earlier. You're mine now, and I take care of what's mine. The possessiveness should have bothered me, should have felt suffocating. But coming from him, it just felt like safety. Later, back in his room, I borrowed one of his shirts and stood at the window looking out at the grounds. The perimeter lights cast everything in stark contrast: safety inside, danger beyond. Dante came up behind me, his arms wrapping around my waist, pulling me back against his chest. What are you thinking? He asked. That a week ago, I was working a normal shift at a normal hospital, living a normal life. And now I'm standing in a mafia compound wearing your shirt, and somehow that feels more right than anything in my old life ever did. His arms tightened. Is that good or terrifying? Both. I leaned back into him. What do we tell people about us? Whatever you want. We can keep it quiet if that makes you more comfortable. And if I don't want to keep it quiet? He turned me in his arms, his eyes intense. Then everyone will know you're mine. They'll know that touching you means answering to me. They'll know you're under my protection, and anyone who threatens you threatens me. That sounds dangerous. It is dangerous. His hand cupped my face. But it's also the truth, and I'm done pretending otherwise. I should have been frightened by the intensity in his voice, by the absolute certainty of his claim, by how quickly everything had changed. But standing there in his arms, I realized something important. I didn't want to go back to before. Didn't want to return to my empty apartment and lonelier life. Didn't want to pretend this hadn't happened. I wanted this. Wanted him. Wanted the danger and the intensity and the absolute certainty that I mattered to someone. "Okay," I said softly. "Okay, what?" "Okay, let everyone know. Let them understand I'm yours." I touched his face, feeling the rough stubble against my palm. "Because you're mine too, and that matters just as much." Something fierce and possessive flashed in his eyes. "Say that again," he demanded. "You're mine." He kissed me hard and claiming and perfect, and I kissed him back with everything I had, because it was true. He was mine, and I was his, and whatever came next, whatever dangers waited beyond these walls, we'd face them together. For better or worse, I'd chosen this, chosen him, and I didn't regret it for a second. The explosion happened 3 days later. I woke to the sound of shattering glass and Dante's body covering mine before I'd fully processed what was happening. The room filled with smoke and noise alarms shrieking, footsteps pounding down hallways, voices shouting in Italian. "Stay down," Dante ordered, his weight pressing me into the mattress. "Don't move. Don't make a sound." My heart hammered against my ribs. What's happening? "We're under attack." The words were matter-of-fact, clinical. Like this was something that just happened in his world. Maybe it was. More sounds, gunfire now, distant but unmistakable. My breath came in sharp gasps, panic clawing at my throat. "Breathe," Dante commanded, his hand finding my face in the darkness. "Look at me. Breathe." I focused on his eyes, dark and intense even in shadow, and tried to calm my racing heart. "I need you to listen carefully," he said. "There's a safe room, 2 doors down on the left. When I give the word, you run there. You don't stop. You don't look back. You get inside and you lock the door from the inside. Understand? What about you? I'll handle this." "That's not an answer, Cora." His voice was firm. "I need you safe. That's all that matters right now. Once you're in the safe room, I can focus on neutralizing the threat. I'm not leaving you." "You don't have a choice." Another explosion, closer this time. The windows blew inward. Glass sprang across the room. Dante covered me again, his body a shield, and I felt him grunt as something struck his back. "Dante, I'm fine." He pulled me to my feet. "Now, run. Go." He pushed me toward the door and instinct took over. I ran. The hallway was chaos smoke, darkness, the flashing red of emergency lights. I found the door he'd described and threw myself inside, slamming it shut behind me. The lock engaged with a heavy thunk. Then silence. Not real silence. I could still hear muffled sounds of fighting, of violence, but the immediate danger was muted. The room was small, windowless, with reinforced walls and a single light that flickered to life when I stumbled further inside. A safe room. An actual safe room, complete with supplies and communication equipment and a wall of monitors showing different angles of the compound. I saw Dante on one of them. He was in the hallway, no longer alone. 5 men surrounded him, armed, dangerous, clearly there to kill. But Dante moved like violence was a language he spoke fluently. Efficient, brutal, terrifying. I watched him break one man's arm, disarm another, put a third on the ground with moves too fast for me to fully process. This wasn't the gentleman who'd held me last night. This was something else entirely. This was the real Dante, the Mafia Boss, the killer. I should have been horrified. Instead, all I felt was fear for him. The fight ended with Dante standing over 5 unconscious or dead. I couldn't tell bodies. Blood stained his white shirt. A cut above his eye dripped red down his face. But he was alive. He looked directly at the camera, like he knew I was watching, and mouthed 2 words, "Stay there." Then he disappeared from view. Time crawled. I watched the monitors obsessively, tracking Dante's movements when the cameras caught him, losing him in blind spots, finding him again. More fights. More violence. He moved through his home like an avenging angel, taking down intruders with cold efficiency. Eventually, the sounds outside stopped. The emergency light switched off. The alarms went silent. And then nothing. I waited, my heart in my throat, staring at the monitors for any sign of him. Finally, after what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, the safe room door handle turned. Cora. Dante's voice muffled through the reinforced door. "It's me. Let me in." I unlocked the door with shaking hands. He stood in the hallway, covered in blood and smoke damage, exhaustion carved into every line of his face, but alive, whole. I threw myself at him. He caught me reflexively, his arms wrapping around me even as he staggered slightly from the impact. "Easy," he murmured. "I'm fine. You're bleeding. Surface wounds. Nothing serious." I pulled back enough to look at him, really look. The cut above his eye. Bruises already forming on his jaw. Blood on his shirt that might or might not be his own. "What happened? Morales." His voice was cold. "Despite the agreement we reached, they decided to test my defenses, see if you were worth protecting." Horror washed through me. This was because of me? This was because they made a mistake. His hand cupped my face. They thought attacking my home, threatening what's mine, would make me weak. Instead, they just signed their own death warrants. The casual way he said it, death warrants should have frightened me. "How many?" I asked quietly. "How many what? How many people died tonight?" He was quiet for a moment. Then, 12 intruders. 3 of my own men. Do you want me to apologize for that? No. And I meant it. I want you to tell me it's over. It's over, for now. He pulled me close again. "But you need to understand. This is my world, Cora. This is what being with me means. Danger, violence. Nights like this. I know. Do you?" He pulled back, his eyes intense. "Because I just killed people to protect you. I'll kill more if I have to. I'll burn down the entire city if it means keeping you safe. And I won't feel guilty about it." I should have been horrified. Should have run. Instead, I reached up and gently touched the cut above his eye. "You're hurt," I said softly. "I'm fine. Let me clean it anyway." I led him back to his room, now missing windows and covered in glass but still functional, and made him sit while I retrieved the first aid kit from the bathroom. My hands shook as I cleaned the cut on his forehead, as I checked his other injuries, as I catalogued all the ways he'd been hurt protecting me. "Stop," he said quietly. "Stop what?" "Blaming yourself? I can see it in your face. People died because of me. People died because they attacked my home." His hand caught my wrist gently. "This isn't your fault, Cora. This is the cost of my life, of my choices. You don't carry that weight? But I'm the reason. You're the reason I fought harder than I might have otherwise," he interrupted. "You're the reason I made sure every single intruder was neutralized before I let myself rest. You're the reason I'm still standing." His hand moved to my face. "Don't take credit for their violence. Take credit for keeping me human enough to care who I'm protecting." Tears burned my eyes. "I watched you on the monitors. Watched you fight. You were terrifying," he supplied. "Incredible." The word escaped before I could stop it. "I was terrified for you, but you were. You moved like a killer," he finished flatly. "Like someone who knew exactly what he was doing." I touched his face carefully, avoiding his injuries. "Like someone who'd do anything to survive, to protect what's his." That's just another way of saying killer. Maybe. I met his eyes. "But you're my killer, and I'm glad you're still alive." Something broke in his expression, the careful control giving way to raw emotion. He pulled me onto his lap, burying his face against my neck. I felt him shake slightly, the adrenaline and fear and violence finally catching up to him. "I thought I'd lose you," he whispered against my skin. "When that first explosion hit, when I realized they'd breached the perimeter, all I could think was that I'd brought you here and made you a target." "I'm fine. We're both fine. This time." He pulled back, his eyes fierce. "But they'll try again. The Morales or someone else." Being with me means always looking over your shoulder, always wondering when the next attack will come. Then we deal with it, together. You say that now? I say it always. I framed his face with my hands. I chose you, Dante. I chose this. And I'm not running just because it got difficult. This is more than difficult. This is dangerous. This is... I kissed him. He went still for a moment, surprised, then kissed me back with something like desperation. Like I was an anchor keeping him tethered to humanity after everything he'd just done. When we finally broke apart, his forehead pressed against mine. I don't deserve you, he whispered. Probably not. I smiled despite everything, but you're stuck with me anyway. His arms tightened around me, and we sat there in the destroyed room, surrounded by glass and blood and the evidence of violence, and somehow I still felt safe, because I was with him, and that was enough. The aftermath took days to manage. Security was tripled, the damaged sections of the house were repaired, and Dante disappeared into meetings with his family, with allies, with people whose names I didn't know and probably didn't want to. I stayed in the compound, watched over by guards who were polite but omnipresent. My apartment sat empty across the city. My job at the hospital was on indefinite leave, family emergency extended indefinitely at Dante's insistence. My old life was slipping away piece by piece, replaced by something I still didn't fully understand. On the 4th day after the attack, Dante called me to his study. He looked exhausted, dark circles under his eyes, tension in his shoulders, but he managed a small smile when I entered. "Sit," he said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. "We need to talk." Dread settled in my stomach. "That sounds ominous. It's necessary." He leaned back in his chair. "The Morelli situation is handled. Permanently. They won't threaten you again." What does permanently mean? It means their family no longer has the resources or the will to challenge mine. His voice was flat. It means I made an example that the other families understand. I didn't ask for details, didn't want to know the specifics of what he'd done. "So it's over," I said. "That particular threat is over, but there will be others." He studied me carefully, "which is why I'm giving you a choice." My heart stuttered. "What kind of choice?" "I can arrange for you to go back to your life. New apartment, new city if you want, money to start over, protection from a distance. You'd be safe but separate from me, from this world. Or you stay. Fully. You move into this house permanently. We make it public, you and me. You become part of my life, my world, my family. Which means accepting the danger that comes with that, accepting that there will always be threats, always be people who see you as a way to hurt me." I stared at him. "You're asking me to choose between safety and you." "Yes." "That's not much of a choice. It's the only fair choice I can offer." He stood, coming around the desk to kneel in front of my chair. "I love you, Cora. I love you in a way I didn't know I was capable of. But that love doesn't mean I'm willing to keep you in danger just because I'm selfish." My breath caught. "You love me?" "Yes." His hands found mine. "I've loved you since you touched me in that hospital corridor like I was just another person. Since you saw me, really saw me, and didn't run. Since you chose to stay even when you understood what I was." Tears blurred my vision. "You're not giving me much time to decide." "I know, but I need an answer, for both our sakes." I looked at him, this complicated, dangerous, gentle man who turned my life upside down, thought about my empty apartment, my solitary existence, the life I'd been living before him. It hadn't been living. Not really. It had been existing, going through motions, filling time. "I love you too," I said quietly. His hands tightened on mine. "Cora, I love you. And I'm terrified of what that means. Terrified of your world and the danger and the violence." I cupped his face. "But I'm more terrified of going back to who I was before, of losing this, losing you. You'd be safe. I'd be alone." I leaned forward until our foreheads touched. "I'd be safe and alone and wondering every single day what you were doing. If you were okay, if you were thinking about me, I'd drive myself crazy. That doesn't mean you should stay in danger. Maybe not, but it means I'm choosing to anyway. I pulled back enough to meet his eyes. I'm staying, Dante. I'm choosing you. I'm choosing this life, even knowing it might kill me. Don't say that. It's the truth, but I'd rather have a shorter life with you than a long one without you. That probably makes me crazy. It definitely makes you crazy. But he was smiling a real smile, full of relief and love and something like wonder. You're sure? I'm terrified, but I'm sure. He kissed me then, deep and claiming and perfect, and I kissed him back with everything I had. Marry me, he said against my lips. I pulled back, shocked. What? Marry me. Not now, whenever you're ready. But marry me. Make this permanent. Make it clear to everyone that you're mine and I'm yours. That's insane. I know. He smiled. But I'm asking anyway. I should have said no. Should have insisted we slow down, think rationally, take time to figure this out. Instead, I heard myself say, okay. His expression shifted, surprise giving way to fierce joy. Okay. Okay. I laughed despite everything. Yes, eventually. When we're both less likely to be killed. Yes. He kissed me again, and this time there was promise in it. Commitment. The kind of certainty that should have frightened me, but instead felt like coming home. We told his family 2 days later. It was the first time I'd met them, his brothers, cold and assessing. His cousin, curious but cautious. His father, terrifying in his stillness. They gathered in the formal living room, expensive suits and calculating eyes, and I felt like I was being evaluated for worth. Dante's hand stayed on my lower back throughout. A claiming gesture, a protection. This is Cora, he said simply. She's staying. Anyone who threatens her threatens me. I want that understood. Silence greeted the declaration. Then his father spoke. You're making her a target. She's already a target, now she's a protected target. Protected how? His oldest brother asked. You can't watch her every moment, can't be everywhere. Then I'll hire people who can. Dante's voice was hard. She stays, that's not negotiable. His father studied me for a long moment. Then, does she understand what she's agreeing to? Yes, I answered, before Dante could. I understand. Do you? The old man's eyes were sharp. Do you understand that people will use you against him? That you'll spend your life looking over your shoulder? That the moment you become important to him, you become a weakness his enemies will exploit? I understand. And you're willing to accept that? I thought about the attack, the violence, the blood and smoke and fear. Then I thought about Dante's arms around me, his gentle touches, the way he looked at me like I was the only thing keeping him human. I'm willing, I said firmly. Something shifted in his father's expression, not quite approval but acknowledgement. Then welcome to the family, he said, such as it is. That night, back in Dante's room, I finally let myself process everything that had happened. Your family hates me, I said. They don't hate you, they're afraid for me. He pulled me against his chest. They've never seen me care about anyone before. They don't know how to handle it. Will it always be like this? Tense and complicated. Probably. His hand stroked through my hair. But we'll figure it out. Together. Together, I repeated softly. Together, he confirmed. You and me against whatever comes next. I turned in his arms, looking up at him. I'm scared. Good. That means you're smart. He kissed my forehead. But you're also brave. Braver than anyone I've ever met. I don't feel brave. You stayed anyway, that's the definition of brave. I settled against him, listening to his heartbeat, and let myself believe it. I'd chosen this. Chosen him. Chosen a life I didn't fully understand but was willing to learn. And whatever came next, whatever dangers waited in the shadows, I'd face them. Because I loved him, and that was enough. 3 months later, I stood in front of a mirror in a private room at a church I'd never been to, wearing a dress I'd never imagined owning, and tried to process what was about to happen. I was getting married, to a man I'd known for barely 4 months. A man who was dangerous, possessive, and completely devoted to me. It should have felt rushed, should have felt wrong. Instead, it felt inevitable. "You look beautiful," Melissa said from behind me. She'd been shocked when I'd called her after months of absence. Even more shocked when I'd asked her to be my bridesmaid, but she'd agreed. And if she had questions about where I'd been or who I was marrying, she kept them to herself. "I look terrified," I corrected. "That too," she adjusted my veil, "but also beautiful. And happy." "I haven't seen you happy in years, honestly." She was right, despite the fear, despite the danger, despite everything that should have made this wrong. I was happy. The door opened. Dante's cousin, Sophia, the only woman in the family, poked her head in. "5 minutes," she said. Then, to me, "You sure about this? Because once you walk down that aisle, there's no backing out. Not from him, not from this family. I'm sure." She studied me for a moment, then nodded. "Good. He needs you, more than he'll ever admit." She disappeared back into the hallway. Melissa raised an eyebrow. "Your new family is intense. You have no idea." The ceremony was small. Immediate family only, Dante's choice, not mine. He wanted me safe, wanted the location secret, wanted no opportunities for enemies to crash the wedding. It should have felt paranoid. It felt practical. I walked down the aisle, alone, no father to give me away, no family to watch proudly. Just me, and a choice I was making with open eyes. Dante waited at the altar in a black suit that probably cost more than my education. But when he saw me, when our eyes met, all that careful control cracked. He looked at me like I was a miracle, like he couldn't believe I was real. I felt the same way about him. The ceremony was short, traditional vows. I barely heard because I was too focused on his hands holding mine, on the way his thumb traced circles against my palm, that gesture of comfort and possession I'd come to know so well. "I do," he said firmly. No hesitation. No doubt. "I do," I echoed and meant it with everything I had. The priest pronounced us married. Dante kissed me with a gentleness that contradicted everything else about the day. About him, about our life together. And just like that, I became Mrs. Dante Caruso, a mafia wife. The thought should have terrified me. Instead, it just felt right. The reception was held at the compound, now fully repaired, more secure than ever. But still, the place I'd come to think of as home. Music played. Food appeared. Dante's family mingled with the few people I'd been allowed to invite. Melissa. A handful of nurses from the hospital, people from my old life mixing awkwardly with my new one. But Dante never left my side. His hand stayed at my waist, his body angled toward me protectively, making it clear to everyone present exactly what I was to him. "Happy?" he asked during a quiet moment. "Yes." I leaned into him. "Are you?" "Happier than I've ever been. Happier than I deserve to be." He kissed my temple. "Thank you." "For what?" "For choosing me. For staying. For touching me like I'm human, even when I'm not sure I am anymore." "You are human." I turned in his arms. "You're complicated and dangerous, and sometimes frightening, but you're human, and you're mine." His smile was beautiful. Forever, forever. Later, when the guests had left and we were alone in our room, reality settled over me. This was my life now. This compound. This man. This dangerous, beautiful, terrifying new existence. "Regrets?" Dante asked, watching me from where he leaned against the door. "No." And I meant it. "You? Never." He crossed to me, pulling me against him. "You're stuck with me now, Mrs. Caruso." "Mrs. Caruso?" I repeated, testing the name. "That's going to take some getting used to. You have the rest of your life to adjust." I looked up at him, this man who'd upended my entire world with a simple request to touch him. "What happens now?" "Now we live." He tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. "We wake up together. Fall asleep together. Navigate my world and figure out how to keep you safe while letting you still be yourself." That sounds complicated. It will be. He was honest, at least. There will be more threats, more danger, more nights where I come home with blood on my hands and darkness in my eyes. I know. And you're okay with that? I thought about it, really thought about it. About the violence I'd witnessed, the attack on the compound, the reality of who he was and what that meant for our future. I'm okay with it, I said finally, because I'd rather have a complicated life with you than a simple one without you. You might change your mind. I might. I touched his face, feeling the familiar scratch of stubble against my palm, but I don't think I will. He kissed me then deep and claiming and perfect, and I kissed him back with everything I had. Months passed. Then a year. I returned to work eventually at a different hospital, closer to the compound, with security Dante insisted on. I resumed my shifts, my routines, my normal life. Except it wasn't normal anymore. Now I had guards who followed at a distance. Now I had a wedding ring that marked me as someone important. Now I had a husband who kissed me goodbye every morning and held me every night, and loved me with an intensity that still sometimes took my breath away. It wasn't perfect. There were still threats, frequent but always present. There were nights he came home angry or violent or too distant for me to reach. There were moments I missed my old life, my old freedom, my old simplicity. But there were more moments when I looked at him and felt grateful. Grateful I'd stumbled into him in that hospital corridor. Grateful I'd touched him without fear. Grateful I'd chosen to stay even when leaving would have been safer. "What are you thinking?" he asked one night, finding me at the window of our room, looking out at the compound grounds. That I'm happy. I turned to him. That this is insane and dangerous and nothing I ever planned, but I'm happy anyway. Me too. He pulled me against him. Every single day, I'm grateful you stayed. Even when it's difficult? Especially then. His arms tightened. You keep me human, Cora. You keep me from becoming just the violence and the power. You remind me there's something worth protecting. I love you, I said. I love you too. He kissed my hair. My wife. My Cora. Mine. The possessiveness should have bothered me, should have felt suffocating. But coming from him, it just felt like home. Years later, when people asked how we met, I never told the full truth. I'd say we met in a hospital, which was true. I'd say it was unexpected, which was an understatement. I'd say I knew immediately he was dangerous, which was both true and not true at all. But I never told them about that first touch, about his whispered request, "Touch me again." About how I'd thought he was flirting when he was actually drowning. I never told them I'd saved him just by seeing him as human. And he never told anyone he'd saved me right back, pulled me out of a lonely existence and into a life that was complicated and dangerous and absolutely worth living. We kept those secrets between us, along with all the others, because that's what marriage was in our world, keeping each other's darkness safe, protecting each other's light, and loving each other despite and because of everything we were, together, always, forever.